looks like some AT&T records.
You know that those are pages from Charles Adelson's call detail records?
Yes, I see his phone number there, yes.
Specifically for the day of April 19, 2016?
Correct.
And you know that because you work on this case and all the review?
Yes.
And those are fair and accurate depictions of those two pages?
I believe so. I don't recall the exact seeing the original record like this. Everything I saw was digital.
Defense offers the pre-market defense 27.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the admitted is defense 27.
Agent defense 27 shows the calls in between. Call 1386 between Charles and Donna, and then the calls between Katie and Charles, right?
Yes, I believe so. I didn't look at them specifically to see what calls were what, though.
All right. Let's break down Dolce Vita. You'd agree with me that the first segment the government did not play,
Yes, correct.
and it's hard to hear.
Correct.
And this jury doesn't know how Charles Adelson framed the issue for Catherine McBannon.
That's correct.
We don't know the 10 minutes in the car. We don't know the first 30 minutes in the restaurant, right?
Correct.
You'd agree with me that in the second segment, when it begins, what we're getting is hypotheticals, right?
Some of it is, yes.
He's talking to her, not really with her.
I disagree with that. There was a lot of him talking, but she does correspond.
He speaks more, right?
He's what?
He speaks more, right?
Yes, he does.
All right. Now, would you agree with me that what you don't hear in that is, hey, it's either the cops or the killers, what do we do? You don't hear that, right?
Not in those words.
All right. You don't hear Charles say to Catherine, talk to the people you hired, right? Figure this out. You don't hear that.
That specific words, no.
You don't hear Catherine say, you know what? I'm going to go talk to the killers and I'll find this out, right?
To the killers, no. She said she's going to go talk to people.
Now, you would agree with me that you would expect, look, your federal work, you've dealt with a lot of conspiracies over the years, right?
Correct.
All right. Now, you listen to a lot of, I'm going to withdraw that question. So, you agree with me that you don't hear that. Nobody gets right to the point. It's Charles Adelson sort of beating around the bush, right?
I'd agree with that, yeah.
You'd agree with me that it would be more effective if two people are involved in a conspiracy together to go right at the point. It's either the people you hired or it's the cops. What do we do? Wouldn't that be the normal thing to do here?
No, I disagree with that because neither one of them knew if the other one was actually cooperating. I think that could have been the point for beating around the bush and talking the way you're talking and doing what they did.
But this is sort of like walking into a movie halfway through and trying to figure out who's the hero, who's the villain, stuff like that, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
The fact that we can't hear the first 40 minutes of the conversation.
Some of the beginning of the conversation is slightly audible. Don't know the first 10 minutes of the conversation in the car, no.
You'd agree with me if it were audible, they were played, right?
There's some of it's audible.
Okay. So, you said, look, it's people feeling each other out. It could also be consistent with, and that's a term that's been used a lot in this trial. It's also consistent with Charles Adelson loading up Miss McBanwood to be a pawn.
Oh, I totally disagree.
Now, on direct, you talked about how there was no mention of murder.
Correct.
There was no mention of Professor Markel.
Correct.
And what you were trying to convey there is she must have known what he was talking about, right?
I was answering your question.
But is that your belief? The relevance of that testimony, is that your belief?
Possibly.
His belief, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Possibly.
All right. Now again, you don't know the first 40 minutes. We don't know that, right?
First 40 minutes?
10 minutes in the car, 30 minutes in the restaurant? Give or take 40 minutes?
I'd say we don't know the first 10 minutes, yes.
The first 30 minutes, and just to make sure that it's clear, the first segment, the first 30 minutes that they're in Dolce Vita, that wasn't played and it's hard to hear, right?
It is hard to hear.
You were also asked about Miss McBanwood's prior statements, right? You remember that?
Yes.
In 2019, she made a statement that Murder wasn't mentioned. And Professor Markel wasn't mentioned, right?
Possibly. I don't recall exactly, but possibly.
Would it refresh your recollection and take a look at it?
Probably, yeah, if you need me to verify it.
So again, agent, because we got a minute there. There was no paper that was shown on it, right? No paper shown that you saw in the video, right?
No paper shown on the video,
Correct.
on the Dolce Vita video.
Yeah.
There was a piece of paper pulled out by Mr. Adelson.
And he held it in his lap, right?
He held it about table high.
Okay. No mention of murder and no mention of Professor Markel, right?
No, not that we could hear.
Okay. So I'm going to approach to refresh. Take a look at this. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Let me know if that helps.
Okay.
Did that help?
Yes,
That's what Ms. McBanwell said, right?
correct,
And then 2 years later, we get this enhancement where you can start hearing things, right?
correct.
And her testimony is consistent with the enhancement that came 3 years later.
I don't know if I agree with that. That piece of testimony right there was.
What you just read, the highlighted portion, is consistent with what was developed 3 years later.
Correct.
Let's go back to the intercepts. Call 825. Now, for pointers and reference, and I'll turn this up. Call 825, the government played it. This is the one where there's a statement, soothe you, and the less you know. You remember that one, right?
Yes,
Now, your understanding of that call, Sigfredo Garcia is mad, right?
yes.
That Katie has spoken to Charles.
No, that's not what I took from it, no.
Okay, and I don't want you to interpret it. So that phone call, that's Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanua speaking potentially about something, right? You think it's inculpatory. We believe that it's exculpatory. You'd agree with me on that, right?
I don't know what you think about it, but yes.
But the phone call was minimized. You heard that right in the middle of it, where and it minimizes. That means that the recording shut off for how long?
I have no idea.
It's not a short period of time. They got to shut it off, and then they got to come back and turn it back on, right?
It's just a button they hit.
Okay,
Yes.
so some law enforcement decided when Sigfredo Garcia is saying, the less you know, that would indicate that he knows more, right?
I don't recall that call being minimized. I thought it was a different call that was minimized.
All right.
I don't think it was that call.
It was. When you hear that zip sound, that's the minimization, right?
It is.
And the jury can go back and listen to call 825 if
Okay.
they choose to later. But you'd agree with me that phone calls where Charles Adelson is talking about June Chinda trying out for the Dolphins cheerleaders, that's not minimized.
Right.
Or the fact that they may have lobster for dinner.
Sure.
But the phone call where Sigfredo Garcia says the less you know, that's potentially minimized.
I don't know about that part being minimized.
And if Sigfredo Garcia is involved in a conspiracy with Charles Adelson, without Miss Magbanua, she would obviously know less than Mr. Garcia, right?
If that was the case, then possibly, yes.
All right. Call 842. Now, we talked before about Charles Adelson potentially using Catherine Magbanua. I know you disagree, using her as a pawn. You'd agree with me that in call 842, that he's trying to get her to come pick up marijuana.
That's what it sounded like.
And he's also trying to give a gift that would go to Sigfredo Garcia, right?
I believe so. That sounds familiar.
Do you realize what he was trying to do?
Keep her happy.
Now, in multiple calls after that call happens mid-April, then on 421, 422, 425, he's again calling and saying, hey, I got this package for you, right?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. You'd agree with me that if Catherine McBanwell were to go to his house and pick up marijuana, and then drive away and get stopped by the police, that he would be able to confirm that his phone is getting tapped.
What's the question?
You would agree with me that if Catherine McBanwell went to the house and picked up illegal drugs and then left his house, she's arrested and then calls and goes, I got arrested leaving your house, that Charles Adelson would know that the calls are being listened to.
A police department or FBI investigating a murder would not stop somebody for picking up marijuana.
But you don't know if he knows that, right?
I would assume that he would have used common sense to know that.
Well, you said that he's sort of spotty with his knowledge, right?
He also said he was intelligent too.
Now, you'd agree with me that somebody in his position, he's done a bad thing.
Yes.
And you said that he's trying to figure out, who's doing what, stuff like that. You would agree that he's suspect if he's being recorded, because he says landline.
Right.
He's concerned about whether he's being recorded.
Later on, after everything, that's when he said landline.
You have no reason to believe at the beginning when the bump happens, when he's saying it's either the cops or the killers, that he's not thinking about the fact that he may be getting tapped?
Not yet, because he's saying things over the phone for the most part.
All right. This would be a way that he could confirm it, right?
I don't think so, no.
All right. Now, if Sigfredo Garcia, and again, we're talking about Catherine McBanwell being used as a pawn, Sigfredo Garcia, if he's cooperating, he can't accept a gift from Charles Adelson, can he?
If he's cooperating with us?
Now again, in call 842, he's trying to push Catherine McBanwell to come and pick up marijuana, and he's also trying to push a gift onto Catherine McBanwell for her and Sigfredo Garcia, right?
I think he just offered it to her. I don't know about pushing her, but go ahead.
A cooperating witness with the FBI could not accept a gift from a target, could they?
A gift? They could go pick it up and turn it over as evidence, absolutely.
Now, let's go to knowledge of law enforcement. There was call 1371 and 2281. You remember this one where Charles is telling Katie, and I apologize, Your Honor, I'm quoting here, find out who the fuck it is.
Yes.
You would agree with me that there's separate phone calls where Charles Adelson is telling Donna, I'm 100% sure, I'm 1,000% sure, I'm 10,000% sure.
Yes.
And those would be respective dates of 4/22, 5/11, and 5/12.
I'd have to take your word for it on the dates.
All right, so on call 1695 on April 22nd, tells his mother, I'm 100% sure it's law enforcement, right?
He never says the word law enforcement now.
But he's 100% sure he knows who it is.
That's what he says.
Now, on May 11th, I'm 1,000% sure.
I don't remember if it was in the same reference or not, but it was never with law enforcement.
May 12th, I'm 10,000% sure.
And again, he never said the word law enforcement. He also said investigators sometimes.
Have you, in your investigation, taken a look? It's called a ZRT report for Sigfredo Garcia's phone.
I don't believe so.
Are you aware of the communications between Garcia and Rivera on May 11th?
Not off the top of my head, I'm not.
A day before he's 10,000% sure.
No.
Now, you would agree with me that later on May 13th, days after he's told his mother, that Charles tells Katie that it's law enforcement. That he tells her last that it's law enforcement.
No, he never says anybody's law enforcement. No.
You're telling me that on May 13th, he does not tell Katie that it's law enforcement, that he's sure that it's law enforcement?
He used those words, law enforcement?
Yes.
I don't remember him saying those words, law enforcement.
Now, I give you all this to ask the question, right? If Charles is saying, find out who it is, right?
Yes.
But he's telling his mother, I know it's law enforcement. Is that not him using Catherine McBanwell as that pawn that we talked about? Mom, I know it's law enforcement. Katie, get in there and figure it out. So that she can go in there and get him information so that he can deal with the situation.
No, I disagree. I believe he was just pandering to his mother to calm her down because he knows how upset she gets. He even said that she had diarrhea all night and everything else. So I think he was trying to calm her down just by telling her whatever would do that.
If Catherine McBanwell was the alleged middle of all of this, Why is Charles Adelson telling her it's law enforcement and not Catherine McBanoa giving him the information of who it is, if she's in the middle?
Repeat the question, just say it again.
Yeah. If Catherine, I went hard on that one. If Catherine McBanoa is in the middle, as you believe that she is,
Yes.
then why is Charles Adelson the one giving her the information about it being law enforcement instead of her giving the information to him?
Because she's in the middle and he doesn't know the other end of it, and she's walled him off.
Now, during this time, in understanding you're not aware of the May 11th and subsequent conversations between Luis Rivera while he's in custody and Sigfredo Garcia. Sigfredo Garcia's phone does not have a tap on it at that time, right?
Sigfredo Garcia's phone? No.
Now, the capabilities were already set up for an intercept on his phone, correct?
What do you mean the capabilities? We did not have a court order for his phone, no.
One brief moment, John. Agent, do you not, if you don't remember, you don't remember, and these questions aren't for you. Do you remember if the intercept was set up on Sigfredo Garcia's phone?
No, I don't.
Would it refresh your recollection to take a look at some of the T3 documents?
No, because I didn't do the T3 documents, but I don't believe we did not have a court order for his phone, as far as I know.
So you'd agree with me that all the phone calls that Sigfredo Garcia is making, the guy who's believed to have pulled the trigger and murdered Professor Markel, his phone is not being recorded.
That's correct.
So we don't know who he's communicating with.
We know who he's communicating with because we have his CDR toll records. I think we had a PIN register on his phone to see who he's talking to and who's calling him. We
Agent,
just didn't have the actual voice recordings.
Agent, is your testimony that you have call detail records for Sigfredo Garcia?
I
'Cause
believe
you
we
don't.
did. We
Okay.
don't.
Would that be a question to ask Sergeant
It
Corbett?
would be, yes, sir.
All right. You'd agree with me, though, that we have no recordings of any of the calls?
That's correct, yes.
All right. So you can't say that it's not a matter of, and again, the dates between Donna and Charles, 100% sure, 1,000% sure, 10,000% sure. 10,000% sure on 5/12, and the day before, Garcia and Rivera are talking while Rivera is in custody. Can you say that it wasn't a situation of Garcia informing Charles Adelson, it's not the Kings, it's the cops?
I have no evidence of that whatsoever.
Because again, these intercepts and these call detail records, they're limited because there's so many other different ways that people can communicate, right?
It's possible.
First, the intercepts were only on two phones, Catherine McBanoa and Charles Adelson, not anybody else involved, especially Sigfredo Garcia. There's no recording, so we don't know what he's saying to anybody, right?
Correct.
And then call detail records are only limited to the cell phones that they're on, but it doesn't cover WhatsApp and FaceTime, and
That's
obviously
correct.
not landlines.
That's correct.
So you can't rule out that that's not what happened, right?
Can't rule it out, but Mr. Rivera was in prison at the time, and his phones were monitored at the prison.
You've obviously, in understanding that you don't know about the ZRT report, so I want to ask you about that. You are aware that federal inmates can get cell phones, right?
They can, yes.
And you are aware that sometimes these cell phones are illegally held by inmates.
Correct.
Now, you would agree with me that, so communication for the jury, if somebody's in federal custody, they use core links to email, right?
Yes.
They don't have the capability to send a text message from a cell phone, right?
Correct.
So if there's text messages from Luis Rivera to Sigfredo Garcia, that would most likely be an unmonitored illegal device.
Correct.
Do you know about Coleman Prison?
I know somewhat about Coleman Prison, yes.
Coleman's a little bit different than some of the other locations, right?
It's a large prison, yes.
Yeah, and some things make it in there, like drugs and cell phones, right?
Sometimes, yes.
All right. Now, let's go to call 2281. And again, the jury heard it. I'm not going to replay these, but you agree with me that Catherine makes a statement to Charles Adelson, I'm trying to get whoever is threatening your family and helping you guys out.
Yes.
Threatening your family.
Yes.
Not
that's what
us.
I said.
Not us. Not us, the killers. Threatening your family, and I'm helping you guys out, right?
That's what she said.
Now, Along those same lines, you believe that Miss Magbanua somehow, if she were innocent, would have called law enforcement, right?
Possibly, instead of getting involved in it, yes.
But it's not her family getting threatened.
But she's in the middle of it, yes.
Well, I understand you believe that. I very much disagree with you. Donna Adelson is approached. That's Charles Adelson's mother, right? She's approached on the street.
But her name is being put in it.
Hear me out. Donna Adelson is approached on the street, right?
Yes,
The guy walks up to her, right?
correct,
She should be calling the cops if she's innocent, right?
correct.
Charles Adelson, that's his mother that was approached. His father is then approached at his dental office. If he were innocent, he should be calling the police, right?
His father wasn't approached, but yes.
Well, wasn't Charles Adelson's statement that somebody came by in that same phone call that dropped off paperwork last week to my father? Didn't he say that to Katie in that same phone
I
call?
don't recall that, but that didn't happen.
Okay. Let's stay on Charles here, and we won't fall down that rabbit hole.
Thank you.
You'd agree with me that it is Charles Adelson's family that they've approached.
Yes,
All right. So Katie is trying to help him out because it's his family who's being impacted. Right?
and her name is brought into it, yes.
Her name is brought into it, but she hasn't been approached by anybody, right?
No, that's correct, she has not been.
Okay, the people that should be going to the police are the Adelsons, not Miss Magbanua.
True.
Someone in her statement in that call is someone is harassing you, and they said my name.
True.
But even then, when it wasn't about her, she still says in that phone call, right? She says, I'm about to go to the FBI. Now, of course, she didn't.
Correct.
But she's the only one that's saying, look, I've had enough of this. Even though they just said my name, I'm calling the FBI.
No, that's incorrect. Charlie said the same thing.
Charles' response to her in that call wasn't no. When she said, I'm going to call the FBI, his response wasn't an attempt to calm her and also to stop her by saying no.
But he made other statements and other calls about calling the police and calling the FBI too.
Okay, now we're going to go off into an aside here, a short one. The government asked you about the disposable phones. And you testified that Ms. Magbanua purchased a burner phone.
She didn't purchase it.
There you go. So, call 3460 on May 24th, right? If you remember this one, if you don't, you don't, that Sigfredo Garcia says that he's hearing,
Objection, hearsay.
not introduced to the truth of the matter.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Sigfredo Garcia says that he's hearing noises on the phone.
You can answer.
I don't recall that.
And that he believes that the conversations are being monitored on May 24th.
On May 24th? I don't recall that. It's possible.
You'd agree that it's the following day that Sigfredo Garcia, not Miss Magbanua, walks into a Walmart and purchased 2 straight talk wireless phones, legally purchased. And I'm not saying he's innocent, but he walks in and he purchases 2 straight talk wireless phones from Walmart.
I know that he walked in and bought those 2 wireless phones from Walmart the night that we tried to interview them.
Okay. And he gave one of those to Miss Magbanua.
Correct.
And she used that to communicate with him.
Correct.
All right. Now, Miss Magbanua did not dispose or get rid of her 1312 number, right?
Correct.
She kept that up until the day she was arrested in October of 2016.
That's correct.
So any testimony that she ditched that phone would be incorrect, right?
Not ditch the phone, no.
She kept it, right?
She kept the phone, yes.
The antithesis of kept is ditched, right?
She didn't utilize it the way she utilized it before.
Now, I'm going to go back to the summary here. You, along those lines, you said that right after that, she left and never came back. You remember that?
To that condo, yes.
All right. She moved down the street, right?
No, I disagree with moving down the street. We're not sure where she went, but I think it might have been Broward County, a whole different county away.
Okay. You understand that by saying that she left and never came back is indicative of somebody who, like, fled the country, right?
No, it's indicative of somebody who's trying to avoid the police who are looking for them and trying to talk to them.
Okay. Now let's look at it objectively, okay?
I am.
It's also consistent with somebody who, the father of her children, who she relies on for financial support, is no longer there for financial support because he's just been arrested, right?
That's incorrect. She fled before he was arrested.
When did... I'm sorry. When was he arrested?
I have to refer to my notes to find the exact date. Do you want me to refer to it?
Please, yes.
He was arrested on May 25th of 16, the evening of May 25th.
So, Agent, you seen this summary here, June 4th, that Ms. McVan was calling U-Haul, right?
I see it there now, yes.
All right, U-Haul, they rent moving trucks, right?
Sure.
What evidence do you have as to when she moved?
She left the house after we tried to interview her, and when she refused to answer the door, she never came back to that residence.
We're going to get to that right after this.
Okay.
But with respect to moving, what evidence do you have that she moved before Sigfredo Garcia was arrested?
She never came back. She didn't move. She never moved herself. Somebody else came and took her belongings out of the apartment.
Okay, the father of her children has just been arrested and being held no bond, right?
That's the next day.
Okay. So, let's unpack this because it's getting a little bit confused. Let's go in chronological order. A few days before Sigfredo Garcia is arrested, you go to Miss Magvano's house to talk to her, right?
Incorrect. It was the very night before,
Then, okay, so the night before.
on the 24th.
You go to the house and you go to talk to her, right?
Correct.
Now, prior to that, there were attempts to speak to Sigfredo Garcia, right?
Incorrect.
Well, give me the timeline of how this happens.
They happened at the exact same time. I went to Mr. Garcia's work and talked to him, so my partner could go talk to Miss Magbanwa, so he couldn't intercept her from cooperating and talking to us. I wanted to distract him while my partner was talking to her, so he could not call her up and say, "Don't talk to the police."
Okay, so
We
for
did
the
it
jury,
simultaneously, exact same time.
I know, but let's explain it for the jury. Who is at Rapid Capital Funding trying to speak to Sigfredo Garcia?
Myself.
And who else?
I had a female agent with me from Miami.
Kelly, right?
Sorry?
Kelly? Agent Kelly?
No,
Blonde hair?
not Kelly. No.
Okay. So you're there with a female agent, you're at Rapid Capital Funding.
Correct.
Investigator Isom, right, and a Miami Beach Police Department detective are out at the house, right?
That's correct.
You know from the intercepts that Miss Magbanwa knows that the FBI has just tried to speak to Sigfredo Garcia, right?
No, that was all simultaneously. She didn't know until she tried to call Sigfredo as they're knocking on the door. She tries to call Sigfredo. Sigfredo's friend picks up the phone and tells her he's outside talking to the FBI.
You would agree with me that Miss Magbanwa inside of the house has no idea who is at the door.
I disagree. She said on the phone it was police at her door.
Okay. For who? Did she say the police are here for me?
No, she said there's police knocking on my door.
Or are the police here? She has a right to remain silent, right?
She does.
Are the police here to bother me about something that Sigfredo has done? Because he's always doing something, right?
Why would she assume that?
Why would you assume that she's not talking to you? That's somehow an indication of guilt.
Because she already said on one of the phone calls, "I'm tired of the fucking FBI messing with us."
Okay. So at that point, when you're at the door, it's a matter of a knock on the door, law enforcement. That's it. Right?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
What did you say when you were at the door? No, you weren't at the door. What did Isom say at the door? If you
I don't
know.
know. I wasn't there.
Okay, so we should ask Investigator Isom.
Correct.
Fair enough. Now, talked about this before in a different piece of evidence, but we'll talk about it more. The facially, the circumstantial evidence, it's good for your theory, right? Or for their theory.
Which evidence?
The circumstantial evidence.
It's part of the case. It's evidence, yes.
But you've intentionally, all law enforcement has intentionally not looked further into the Instagram photos, into the nightclubs, into the car, into the paychecks, into the work, because the risk of uncovering legitimacy of any of it, right?
Objection,
That-
argumentative.
You can answer.
That is totally incorrect.
And that's the same reason why you didn't record Rivera's first interview,
That is totally incorrect.
because he could have said something that would have impeached himself.
Totally
Right.
incorrect.
In this evidence that was being used to potentially get her to cooperate against Charles Adelson so that you could build a case against your target, it could fall apart, right?
That's incorrect. We're just trying to get the truth.
You agree with me, though, and you said it before, you're trying to get everybody to cooperate, but the goal was to get her to cooperate against an Adelson.
Is try to get is try to solve the case is the goal. Is try to get the truth of what happened, who did what, and hold those responsible that were responsible for the murder.
Have you not said that that's what you'd like to see happen, both professionally and personally?
Objection. Relevance.
Overruled. You can answer.
I've not said that I personally want that to happen. I want people to cooperate, and I want people to tell the truth.
Your Honor, I'm going to impeach a witness, but I'd like to show the clip to the government first. It's very short. Your Honor wants to see it.
I'm going to have to.
We're going to cover Your Honor wants to bring it up to you. Yeah, I'm trying to not trip over this.
All right, what was now let's restate the question.
Agent Sanford, did you ever say, I want her to cooperate?
Objection.
Hold on. I know, I got to hear the question first, and then I'm going to make a
I
ruling.
know, Your Honor, but the hearsay's in the question, so.
No, that's not.
I'd rather it be handled at sidebar.
Go ahead and ask the question.
Agent, did you ever say that what you would personally like to see happen is her cooperate?
All right, so now you can answer that question.
In the original interview I did with Rivera when I was trying to get him to cooperate, that's a tactic that I said to try to let him know that I did not need him to cooperate against his childhood friend, Sigfredo Garcia. I told him that I want the people that caused this to happen. I don't need your cooperation against Sigfredo. I don't want you to roll over on him because, quite frankly, gang members have a loyalty to each other. They're not going to roll over on each other. But he doesn't know the people that might have caused this to happen, and that's who I was telling him I want him to cooperate against. Yes.
Your Honor, I'd now like to impeach the witness.
All right, you can go ahead and play.
Agent, do you remember speaking to Ms. Vanganda's brother?
Yes, I do.
That's not Louis Rivera.
No, it's not.
That's what I like to see. I want her to cooperate. I want her to give us the people that caused this to happen. That's what I like to see happen personally.
Agent, you'd agree with me that you can't force someone to cooperate if the evidence shows they're innocent, correct?
No, I'd agree.
You'd agree?
I'd agree that you can't force somebody to cooperate, yes.
No. My question to you was, if the evidence shows that somebody's innocent, you can't force them to agree with evidence of innocence, can you?
No.
You need to build a case against them to force them to cooperate.
I don't try to build a case against somebody to force them to do anything.
To let Your Honor know, I'm close.
All right.
It shouldn't be too much longer. I'm down to the final pages here.
Okay.
So let's go back to Luis Rivera
Okay?
and your knowledge of him. You know he's a dangerous guy, right?
Yes.
He's a Latin king.
Yes.
You have professional experience with the Latin kings.
Some.
You know that they're a criminal organization.
Yes.
They're well organized.
Yes.
They make money through crime,
Yes.
including murder.
Yes.
It's a Latin-based gang,
Correct.
strong presence in Miami.
Yes.
He was the boss.
And he was the boss of just the North Miami tribe, yes.
Should we rely on his testimony as to what he was the boss of? Whether it was Miami or just North Miami?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Who would know better of what he was the boss over, you or him?
Oh, he would.
Okay. You would agree with me that somebody in his position, he's already serving a sentence, he's charged with first-degree murder, there's strong evidence against him that he was potentially in a desperate situation.
Would I agree with you on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
Charged with first-degree murder,
Yes,
and Sigfredo Garcia could flip against him.
he could.
You've read the discovery in this case, some of it, right?
Some of it, yes.
The arrest warrants. Now, for the jury, an arrest warrant, you got a document that's signed by a judge, but then there's also a long story that explains the case to get that warrant signed, right?
Yes.
And you would agree with me that the theory, the government's theory that this was through Miss McBanwell was in that narrative for those arrest warrants for Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia.
I don't recall exactly what was in those arrest warrants off the top of my head.
All right. Now, the FBI reports, you talked about it, it explains the cell activity, right? The cell communication activity, your reports explain that.
Some of it, yes.
And you're getting that data from your close communication, not close communications, but your regular communications with Sergeant Corbett.
Correct. He gave me access to a database that I could look at, yes.
Now, you did reports, and I have them here if you need refreshing. First, you did a report, and the investigation date, that's what I go by, is June 8, 2016, and it talks about the June trip, right?
June 8th of 2016 is the date of the report?
Yeah.
Okay.
wanna
I'll
take
take
a
the
look?
word for it.
Okay, and it talks about the June trip.
Okay.
You would agree there's also a report that was dated January 28, 2016 that talks about the July trip.
I don't remember the dates, but yes, there's a report about the July trip too.
And each of these reports, the latter is 7 pages, the other one is 8 pages.
Sounds about right.
And that talks about details in the case, correct?
Correct.
And you would have provided those to the prosecution?
Yes.
And that's why I have them here today, right?
Correct.
But Luis Rivera, he would have gotten those too, right?
I don't know what he would have gotten.
It's your belief based on your experience that your reports, especially on this case, would go over the defense, right?
Yes, it should be provided over discovery, yes.
And you know, before Luis Rivera took a plea, that's actually one of the questions they ask is, have you reviewed all your discovery with your attorney?
Usually, yes.
And you'd agree with me that these reports are authored well before he starts cooperating.
Yes, I agree with that, yes.
Now, you talked about Investigator Isom, that he wrote a whole bunch of reports too, right?
Yes.
And you would agree that those, and you've reviewed those reports, right?
Some of them,
And they discuss the theory that the connection was through Miss McBanwell, right?
yes.
All right. Let's go to the next topic. Still on Luis Rivera, the murder weapon. You know the route, I-10 to I-75, right?
Correct.
You said that, maybe 30 to 40 hours you tried to do the search,
Yes.
but ultimately he couldn't give you the location.
He tried to give us a location, yes.
Now that's consistent with he doesn't remember the location, right?
Somewhat. He thought he gave us the right location.
Or he doesn't want you to find the gun. It's consistent with that, right?
I don't think so.
Now, You, as a federal agent, you've been involved in a lot of federal prosecutions, right?
Yes,
The one thing that could take a case like this to federal court would be interstate commerce, right?
yes,
That gun in the ammunition could establish interstate commerce, correct?
it could.
Basically, what we're saying is that the feds, federal prosecution, you get jurisdiction if you have something that ties to out of state.
That's possible, yes.
And you are aware that Mr. Rivera or anybody, you can be prosecuted for the same crime, the same events in both state court and federal court at the same time.
That's true.
Double jeopardy doesn't apply,
Very true.
and the legal language is that they're separate sovereigns.
That's correct.
So he could be prosecuted for murder in federal court as well, too.
No, not based on that weapon, he could not be.
You couldn't establish interstate commerce on a .38 revolver manufactured out of state?
If we found that weapon because he led us to it, it was under a proffer where he had immunity. We couldn't use that weapon against him.
You couldn't use his statement against him, but you could use the weapon against him.
Not if he led us to that weapon.
All right. But you don't know what his knowledge is about whether he could be prosecuted federally or not, right?
I don't know that.
And this is in the thought, and the fact is he just came out of a federal prosecution, right, for RICO.
His attorneys would tell him that, though.
If there's other bodies on that gun, that could also cause a problem for him as well, too, right?
Not if we found the gun per his instructions out of that proffer.
There isn't a disclaimer in the proffer if you talk about any violent crimes that that's not covered by the proffer?
I don't know what proffer. I don't know what was in that proffer, though.
All right. So you wouldn't know then what applies to Mr. Rivera and what doesn't as to exposure to federal liability, right?
I don't. It's general immunity, but I don't know the specifics of this one.
Now, Agent, conclusion here, you'd agree with me that this is a dangerous criminal in a desperate situation who knows what you want to hear.
I don't know if I agree with that now.
You think that, and you talked about this on the direct, you think that his facts fit the story, right? Or that the facts fit his story, right?
The facts fit his story for the most
The
part.
bullet hole, stuff like that?
For the most part, yes.
Have you ever considered that he's fitting his story to the facts that you gave him?
I considered that, and if he was able to remember all those facts that I can't even remember sitting up here, he's a much smarter man than I am.
He got a bullet hole right? Right?
He got a lot of things right.
You get a bullet hole right? And a
Yes.
few other things. Now, again, you deny directly telling him what to say.
Absolutely.
And what he says to you is, and we saw it at the beginning of this cross-examination, that Katie is the one in the middle doing everything.
Yes, he did say that.
And in the first meeting that you ever had with him, on May 27, 2016, that's the exact same thing that you said to him, isn't it?
I don't believe so, no.
Here, one moment. Agent, again, 5/27/2016, that's the first time that you have ever spoken to Luis Rivera, correct?
That's correct.
Is there an objection, Ms. Kappelman?
No, Your Honor.
Investigator Eisen was there?
Yes, sir.
It was recorded.
Yes, sir.
You're not going to restart it because reverberation.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna turn down the volume a little bit.
Think about it, don't shut it down, think about it, that person in the middle, you need that little information to that person in the middle, you find out the other side of that, that person in the middle is doing that, and that's the person you can help with. That's enough to beat you. So, think about it, don't shut it down, think about it, that person in the middle.
Agent, do you remember what it was that Mr. Rivera said months later after he gets it discovered?
Yes,
This is what he said, right?
right.
So he's saying Katie is the person between the woman that wants this done. Katie's the one in the middle doing everything. Okay. And that's what he's telling me. Okay. So he's saying Katie.
It's the exact same thing, isn't it?
Not
in
exact-
in May of 2016, the first time you ever meet with him, you tell him, the person in the middle, you know who it is, and that's what you can get to get a reduction from a life sentence or the needle going into your arm.
That is not what I said.
You just heard it, right?
And I didn't say anything about that's what you need to do to get a reduction or any of that stuff.
And
You're
I'm not
adding
saying,
to it.
and I'm not saying that you did that. I'm not saying that you walked in there with the intent of forcing him like that. What I'm talking about is that this man is intelligent, he saw an opportunity and he took it. He knew that what he needed to say is that she's the one in the middle, that she's the one doing everything, and based on your words, that that's what he could do to get time off. You'd agree with me that that's a reasonable understanding based on what you just said to him in May.
No, if you back that recording up and hear the whole thing in context, it puts in better context about what we were talking about at that time.
You would agree with me that in an earlier portion of it, what is said to him is, you can't give us Garcia because we already have him. But Investigator Isom says, you can't give us Garcia, we got him.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Now, again, I'm not saying that this was your intent, Agent. I'm not. But you'd agree with me that what you said was, the person in the middle, that can get you a reduction. That was said, right?
I did not say that could get you a reduction. No, I did not. I said that you could. I said you can
Do you
give
wanna
us a
hear it
person
again?
in the middle.
Do you want to hear it again?
That I said it could get a reduction? I
That
don't
could
remember
get,
saying
that could get you some time off. Did you say that?
I didn't say reduction, but maybe time off is possible.
Think about it, don't shut it down, think about it, that person in the middle, you need that little information to that person in the middle, you find out the other side of that, that person in the middle is doing that, and that's the person you can help with. That's enough to beat you.
So he's saying Katie is the person between the woman that wants this done. Katie's the one in the middle doing everything. Okay. And that's what
Can get you something. That's what you said, right?
Okay. Maybe I said that, yes.
Your Honor, if I could have one brief moment, I'm going to talk to counsel. I think we have one final topic.
Briefly.
Nothing further. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect, Ms. Kappelman.
Yeah, if you don't mind me standing up, sorry.
Looking for is. Oh, yeah.
So, because I published all this.
Yeah, it's fine.
There you go. And you want that one. That one's not in there. I'd like it bigger. There's one final thing. Okay. Your Honor, if we can reopen cross for one final matter.
Yes.
The defense moves in recording that was just played.
Right, it's
527 interview.
defense 28. Okay, it'll be admitted.
And does that include only this witness, or are there other things in here
It's just that clip.
of this witness?
Just the clip that you said.
Does it include Rivera?
So both of those clips are there. Sorry, Your Honor, to crosstalk.
But not Rivera's statement without being in there.
No, that one.
All right. But wait, there's more. All right. You were asked about, can you force somebody to cooperate? Can you force somebody to cooperate if they're innocent of a crime? Can you force someone to cooperate if they're guilty of a crime?
No, you cannot.
You were asked about your personal opinion, what you want to see happen in this case. You want to see all the guilty parties held accountable, right?
That's correct.
And you want Garcia to cooperate, right?
Correct.
But he didn't cooperate, did he?
No.
And does that mean he's innocent of the crimes that he's charged with?
No.
Everyone here seems to agree that he's guilty.
Correct.
Charlie's guilty. Everybody's guilty. Except Ms. McDaniel, right? Can't force anybody to cooperate.
That's
They
correct.
have a constitutional right to a trial by jury.
Absolutely.
Right to have the state prove the case against them in a court.
Absolutely.
A defense. They have a right to that too, right?
That's correct.
All right. And is there anything nefarious about the fact that Mr. Rivera's attorneys were provided with his discovery in his case?
No, they're right.
I mean, that's how it works, right?
That is how it
In
works.
fact, it's required, right?
Correct.
The defense in this case was provided with the discovery, right?
Correct.
And in fact, they've had, 7 additional years from Mr. Rivera to study the discovery and conform a defense however they see fit.
That's correct.
Objection. Denigration of counsel.
Overruled.
You were shown exhibit. Defense Exhibit 3 about I'll let you know my availability. Do you remember that text message?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to show you an additional exhibit that I've marked as States 135. Just disappeared because I put to do with it. Here we go. All right, if you have to start at the back, work forward. Take a minute to study on that, and also Defense 3. Let me know when you're done.
Okay.
All right, so I'm looking at the content surrounding the text message that the defense introduced as Defense 3. Does it appear there could be some other explanation for what they're talking about there other than her coming to work at the Adelson Institute?
Yes, there does.
And what is that?
Apparently, Mr. Adelson was taking out Miss McBaden's wisdom teeth, I believe.
All right, and Judge, at this time, I'd ask to move into evidence States 135.
Any objection?
No.
To be admitted as States 135.
You were asked about either the cops or the killers. It's got to be one or two things, and I'm jumping around a lot here, I'm sorry, but we're going to the wire and what the bump could mean and the discussions about that. Was there a third possibility that was discussed on the wire where it's just somebody who's read about this case and doesn't know anything about it, that isn't really on the inside?
That's correct.
So that was an option that was considered as well, right?
Correct.
And when you were asked about the bump and the opportunity for Donna to make calls on some other line before calling Charlie in that call A that we heard, was she being surveilled during that time between the bump and call A?
Being surveilled, yes, she went back into her condo, yes.
Okay, but right when the bump happens, doesn't she go to get the children?
That's correct.
All right, so the bump occurs at, do you know exactly what time?
I'd have to refer to my notes again on the times.
Okay, go ahead. It is a test.
I believe it was 1:47.
1:47 p.m.?
Correct.
All right, and then she walks and gets the children. Do we have an idea of what time she enters the icon with the children?
It was a good, I'm guessing right now, but about 10 minutes,
All right, so about 1:57, she's re-entering the building.
somewhere around there.
Okay, and what time is the call placed to Charlie that we heard, that call A?
I believe it's 2:09.
Okay. And during the time that she was walking to get the kids and walking back to the icon, was she on the cell phone during that time?
No, she was not.
All right, the list of calls that you were showed that were not played, do you know whether that list includes calls that were not answered, meaning missed calls?
Yes.
Okay. All right, and we had some missed calls between Catherine Magbanua and Charlie Adelson in this case during the wire, right?
Correct.
All right. Did we hear that call D on State's Exhibit 99, that first call that we heard between Magbanua and Charlie Adelson, was that the first time they talked on the wire after the bump?
Yes, it was.
All right, you were asked about I guess there was a couple work calls that Charlie Adelson makes between the time of him talking to Donna and learning about the bump and him talking to the defendant.
Yes.
Objection,
were-
hearsay, as to the contents of unadmitted calls.
Well, she hasn't asked about any content at this point.
Were those calls intercepted?
Okay.
Yes.
All right, and was there any mention on those calls of this operation, the police operation?
No, none whatsoever.
You previously testified that this defendant gave testimony that she had no idea there was a murder at all until Sigfredo Garcia was arrested.
That's correct.
All right, is that consistent or inconsistent with what has now been revealed by the Dolce Vita audio clarification?
Hold on.
Improper opinion.
Overruled. You can answer.
Sorry, ask again.
All right, so you previously testified that you had reviewed the prior testimony of the defendant in this case,
Correct.
and that her testimony back in 2019 was that she never knew there was a murder at all until Garcia was arrested.
Correct.
All right, and is that position consistent or inconsistent with what has now been revealed through the Dolce Vita conversation that we can now hear?
It's inconsistent.
You mentioned, I guess you were asked on cross-examination about Catherine Magbanua, why she did or didn't act a certain way on the wire, and you said she was walling off. You believe she was walling off Charlie Adelson. What does that mean?
It's where you protect yourself by not sharing all the information that you have with other people. And that way those people can't use things against you or whatever, but It's a term we use in law enforcement a lot, of walling someone off.
So is that something we commonly see in a conspiracy where the conspirators deliberately don't know who's down the line?
Absolutely.
And Catherine Ivanova does not say the name Tudo, Tato, Garcia, Rivera, any of that on the wire to Charlie, does she?
No, she doesn't.
Okay, but she does know that information.
Yes, that's
That
correct.
that's who the undercover was referencing.
Correct.
And in the opposite direction, when she's speaking to Sigfredo Garcia, is she walling off Charlie?
Yes, it appears to be that that's what she's doing.
Right, so when he's 100% sure, 1,000 million zillion percent sure that it's law enforcement, as he's saying that, as far as we know, he doesn't know anything about the fact that that information was true. Tato and Tudo are someone that is known in the case.
That's correct. I don't believe he knew who Tato was and that he was actually in jail
In Broward County.
in Broward County.
All right, and so at the same time frame that he's saying, I'm 10,000% sure it's the cops, she's saying it's getting too detailed, it's coming from the inside. She's saying that to Garcia,
That's correct.
because Garcia does know who Tato is.
Exactly.
You were asked about the money drop and the locations of phones at the time of the money drop. Would you defer to Sergeant Corbett on exactly where what phones were at the time of the money drop?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Same with Instagram record retention policies?
Yes,
That's a little bit outside your area of expertise?
it is. I didn't deal with that at all.
All right. And you were asked about, isn't King Anthony something new that Rivera is adding? Did Rivera call King Anthony by another name in this case?
I believe he called him Ortiz.
Okay, but there's another name. Do you remember it? Would it refresh your recollection to review either ISOM's 930 report or the 10-4 statement of Rivera?
Yes, probably.
Okay, let me show you.
I don't object to you just saying it.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Did Rivera refer to King Anthony as Hebero?
Hebrew. Yes, I'm sorry.
All right, and Hebero was mentioned in the 930 non-recorded proffer, wasn't he?
Yes.
Okay, and he
So,
was also mentioned on that 10-4 statement. That
sounds-
specifically that he sent Hebero to go get Garcia from Shrimps on the day of the money drop.
that's correct.
All right, you were asked about the clubs and the money and how much of an investigation you did into trying to figure out how much cash she made at these clubs. One of the exhibits that you were shown by the defense, and I'm not sure, did this get a number? The club? What's the next defense number on here?
29.
Okay, we're going to call it defense 29 for identification.
Thank you.
Remember seeing that one?
Yes.
And why was she quitting the clubs, according to that text?
They were behind on paying me. It's a lot of work. And they have to clean up after that. That's what she tips out the busboys for.
They're making her clean up at the end of the shift, and she's
Yeah.
not making any money.
Objection, mischaracterization of what's not in evidence.
Well, it hasn't been admitted in evidence, but it's a defense exhibit, so we're in an odd position. Are you asking for it to be admitted in evidence?
No, sir, I just think that the door has been open since he was shown this and asked about it, and
May the defense move to enter it in, and then Ms. Kaplan can ask her questions.
Do you have any objection?
no objection, Your Honor.
All
Thank
right.
you, Your Honor.
So it's moved in as defense exhibit 29.
Regarding Hollywood Live and Club Fate, you did get some information about Hollywood Live way back in 2016, didn't you, from Yindra?
Yes, correct.
Okay, Yindra also worked at Hollywood Live
That's correct.
at the same time as this defendant?
Yes,
Okay, and that evidence suggested that she wasn't making a lot of money at Hollywood Live, didn't it?
that's correct.
All right, and Club Fate, we got a bounce check. That's it, right?
Correct.
Doesn't suggest it's a highly successful business, does it?
No.
All right, but in any event, if she was making a ton of money at the club, publishing States Exhibit 18, sorry, 81M. She was killing it at the club. She especially killed it around the time of this murder.
Hold on.
Objection, speculation, and proper
Over.
question as to killed it.
No, it's overruled.
She did real good around the murder, didn't she?
She sure did.
And not so good any other time, comparatively speaking.
Correct.
All right. All right, I want to ask you about at the time that the Dolce recording, we listened to that today. I know it's been a long time ago, but you remember hearing that this morning,
Yes.
and you've heard it before.
Yes.
Okay, and you heard the discussion on there about the vehicle. If your DNA is in the vehicle, if they can put you in the vehicle, that can't prove anything, right?
Correct.
Was the photo of the Prius, I know there was a photo of the Prius, the suspect vehicle, that was blasted out to the media. Was that done before or after the Dolce?
That was done before the Dolce. That was on the 1-year anniversary, I believe, of the
Okay.
murder.
All right, so that had been out for some time, that information that there was a suspect vehicle, and this was it.
That's correct.
All right, while we're on the top of the vehicles, let's switch over to the Lexus. You were asked about the value of the Lexus, and I think you started to say you did know it. What was the value of the Lexus?
My partner reported, did research on it and found that it was, I believe it was 6,000.
Objection, hearsay, move to
That's
strike.
hearsay, that's sustained.
All right, so if she paid $1,700, let's assume she did pay $1,700 for a Lexus, and that evidence you have that it was in mint condition. She got a good deal, right?
Yes, very good deal.
It's not like she's driving a Bentley, right?
Right.
All right, you were asked about the pattern of the calls. And is the pattern of the calls and communication between the parties in this case consistent with guilt? Does it prove guilt? And the point that the defense was making, I believe, is that, these people had relationships outside of doing a murder together, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So the fact that they were communicating with each other does not in and of itself prove that they did a murder together.
That's correct.
All right. When you see the flurry of activity right before important events in this case, is that something that raises your suspicion about those particular calls?
Yes, it does.
All right. And you're not able to, some people think law enforcement can just go into the cloud, I don't know, and listen to any of our calls retroactively. Is that something that can be done?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so you can't go back to before the June trip when everybody was calling everybody and listen to those calls and hear what they were saying.
No.
All right, same thing with the July trip. Can't do that, can you?
No.
All right, so we can't be sure from that activity if that pattern really does relate to the flow of information passing from one conspirator to the other, as we suspect.
Correct.
All right, is there a way that we could plant some information and listen to what these folks are saying to demonstrate that fact or ferret out that suspicion.
Yes, that's why we did the bump.
That's why we did the wire. And they do talk about it, don't they?
Yes, they do.
No further questions.
All right, you want the witness subject to recall?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, you're subject to recall, and so they'll let you know if you need to reappear, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Does the state have another witness?
May I have 1 moment to confer with the clerk, Your Honor?
Okay, good, thank you. Have a good evening. Is there an exhibit remaining up here? There's an exhibit up here. Ms. Dugan, could you get that? I think that's 135.
That yes was for Kurt's not being.
Judge, at this time, the state rests.
All right, the state has rested its case. That means they've presented all their testimony at this time. We're going to break for the day. All right, I apologize. I know that we've gone over, but I wanted to finish this one witness and not break it up. I will be more mindful of that tomorrow. We won't go over tomorrow, so we won't have any issues with that. Okay, in the morning, we'll start with the defense case, and we'll move as quickly as we can, and we'll have a better estimate of how we'll be proceeding once we have some discussions here in the courtroom, okay? So please, again, no discussions amongst yourselves or with anyone else, no searches on the internet or any press reports. We'll see everybody back here tomorrow at 8:30, okay? Thank you very much.
Oh, yes.
No, I don't think so. Might not buy you a beer, though.
All right, jury's out of the courtroom. The door is closed. Please be seated. The state has rested its case. Any motions on behalf of the defense?
Your Honor, I didn't know if you wanted me to do that now or if you want me to do that first thing in the morning.
Is it going to be a lengthy motion?
No, it's just, I just want to just be able to cite cases, but I will be very concise in my arguments.
All right, you can go ahead and do it now then.
No, I was asking if we could do it first thing in the morning, Judge. Just
Oh,
so I can
because you want to get cases?
I want to add just the citations to case
All right,
law. But
okay.
it will be no more, Judge, than I would say tops less than 10 minutes, if that much, 5 minutes maybe.
Are you on Mr. DeCoe's same timeline?
No, sir.
That clock is broken, all
No,
right?
sir, no, sir.
All right,
And it's
sorry
only
for
because
calling
it's
you
a
out on that,
three-ounce,
Mr.
Judge. I
DeCoe.
just want to have the case law, but.
All right, I'll allow you to make any motions in the morning.
Thank you.
And so, as I stated before, we have a timeline that we're trying to deal with. If I could have a list of witnesses, have all your witnesses here tomorrow, please. And then, based on what you give me, then we'll see when we need to do an inquiry with Ms. Magbanua in regards to her testifying. We'll get through tomorrow as efficiently as possible, and as we know, we're going to break by 5 o'clock tomorrow. Okay? And then we'll see where we stand. Anything before we break?
We do have one issue that we can handle now that would be helpful. So Stephen Downing, who is a sergeant with Florida Highway Patrol, is our witness. It was, the government has them listed, but he testified for the defense in the previous trial. He's testifying again for the defense. While I was cross-examining Agent Sanford right before it, ASA Dugan emailed that she had a conversation with our witness, that he went back in his records and now his testimony is perhaps changed. And we've received a new document. So we've received now a document right before the state has rested their case. That is a new document. And the relevance of it is this. Trooper Downing testified in a deposition and a trial consistently over the course of years that when he pulled over Luis Rivera, he was alone in the car. Now, all of a sudden, his testimony apparently has changed after a conversation with ASA Dugan, that there's perhaps now an indication that there was a passenger in the vehicle.
All right, what's the document that has been provided to you?
It's a screenshot from a database.
Okay, and so Ms. Dugan, was this just provided to you by the trooper today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as far as a Richardson hearing, I mean, I don't think that there was any intentional hiding of this. It was just presented to the state today. And so I think in regards to the prejudice, I know that it changes the testimony that you were expecting, but the trooper will be here. He'll be here in the morning, and he'll give you an opportunity to speak with him in the morning or whenever you choose to call him.
The issue that I want to make for the record is this, and I don't, Your Honor, I don't say this lightly. This trooper, with other prosecutors, Ms. Dugan is new to this case, with previous prosecutors, and there's many that were involved. We sat down for deposition. We did not, beat around the bush with these questions. We were very detailed in the questions. Same thing in the trial, same thing in the prep. How? During trial, there was a conversation with a new prosecutor, and all of a sudden it's, the testimony changes. I cannot help but think that this is an attempt to change his testimony.
All right,
because
Mr.
it's so
DeCruz,
harmful.
I'm not even going to hear that. You're going to have to talk to the witness about that.
Understood.
Only the witness will know that if you're making any type of accusation. I'm going to say that it was inadvertent. It's in the scope of things. It's not. It's important to you. I understand that. And so it certainly can be substantial, because I know that this is an issue in regards to whether he was traveling 2 people or 1 person in the car. But you can talk to the trooper about it tomorrow. And I think with the quantity of his testimony and what he is testifying to, you can get whatever information you need to get from him tomorrow morning. And so I'm going to find that you're not prejudiced by that, because the state didn't even know about it until today also. And I don't have any indication that the state is feeding this witness. They're entitled to talk to the witness just as you are. So the witness will know that. Certainly if there's any indication from the witness of that, then it's a different issue. Okay?
Understood.
All right. So we'll be in recess then until tomorrow. 8:45, we'll meet back and start with the defense case. We'll hear motions first and then proceed accordingly. Okay?
Yes,
All
sir.
right. Everyone have a good evening.
You too, Judge, thank you.